Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video. We are going to be ranking all of the palettes that I used throughout the month of February. I have 14 palettes to rank for you today, from my most favorite palette used all the way to my least favorite palette used in the month of February. So if you are interested in which palettes I enjoyed using versus which ones I didn't, or if you're just interested in seeing what palettes I used in the month of February, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning or palette themed content or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. I never know if my lighting is like what I want, and then I feel like I go to edit and I'm like never happy with the way that like my lighting is. I'm also uncertain about my makeup. I have my Sugarpill bite-sized palette is currently in my No Pan Left Behind series. By the way, I'll leave my palette playlist linked down below and any other palette related content, but I'm currently doing No Pan Left Behind this year, and this Sugarpill fun size palette is one of the palettes, and I wanted to clear all the pans so that I could roll this out and have a rollout, which I did do. And I had so much fun actually creating this very rainbow look, but I've never done like a straight rainbow on my eyes. So if it isn't translating well, like in person, I'm like, dang, like I'm actually, based on like my knowledge of like my skill, like I know that like I'm not the best at doing my eyeshadow, especially like blending in my hooded eyes, my downturned eyes. I'm actually like proud of how this look turned out, but if it's not translating onto the camera, please don't be mean. Alright guys, as mentioned in the introduction, I do have 14 palettes that I used throughout the month of February. Looking at all these palettes, so in February I was on a week-long work trip and I only brought 2 palettes with me, and then there was a week of time right after that that I was in a training for work that like it just didn't really make sense for me to like do my eyeshadow. Like no one else was like coming to work with eyeshadow on their face, so there was basically a full week that I didn't wear eyeshadow with the exception of like on the weekends. I would occasionally do my makeup and eyeshadow. So I feel like my opportunity to use my eyeshadow palette collection just wasn't as much. Plus February is the shortest month. I don't know why I'm justifying myself. It doesn't really matter. I just have 14 palettes to rank for you today. We're going to be ranking from my least favorite all the way to my favorite. And let's get into it. I'm currently making a meatloaf. Like I purchased the meatloaf like pre-made, and I'm like, it didn't give instructions on the label for like what I should set my oven to. I suppose I could have looked that up, but I'm like concerned I'm gonna burn it and be really upset. Like, but I'm like literally craving meatloaf so much. Is meatloaf one of those options for you guys? Tell me this isn't you. Whenever like I would be told like we're going to grandma's house and meatloaf is what we're having, I would be like, ugh, meatloaf, like ugh. But then I would eat the meatloaf and be like, oh my god, I love meatloaf so freaking much. Does anyone else feel that way about meatloaf? That like, hands down, every time I was told meatloaf is what is for dinner, I would be like, I do not want meatloaf. That's disgusting. And then I would like eat it and get seconds. Does anyone else feel that way about meatloaf? Okay, you guys, I'm also gonna try this month to only have one upload and not leave you guys hanging for a week and a half about what my top 3 palettes are. Okay, so let's start with the worst. This Charlotte Tilbury Easy Eye palette. I'm sorry, but like why does luxury eyeshadow typically just like suck so much? Like, can't you put a little bit more effort into a palette you're charging so much for? So thankfully I ended up getting this in my Beautylish Lucky bag. This isn't something that like I was perusing for, and like, I mean, I did spend my money on it in a way, but it wasn't like I like spent my money on it. Do you know what I mean? But I also think I am really in like a cool toned era. Like I'm loving all of the cool tones. So it could just be that I wasn't loving the tones in this palette, but it's just boring, and like the quality is fine. It's not like bad quality, but I just found this palette incredibly boring, and I don't know that I want to keep this around just because I'm like, I feel like this will just take up space in my collection, and I would much rather use just about my entire palette collection over this. So this palette is also going in my No Pan Left Behind. It is the Melt Mayrjane. This one is coming in at number 13. And I am so torn on this one because let me tell you, I created a look with this one yesterday. And as I was creating the look, so I had this shade, I had these two shades that I needed to use. They are the most crumbly shades ever. Like literally I was dipping my brush in and crumbles of eyeshadow were flying all over my bathroom. Like my bathroom sink counter situation was an absolute disaster, and I'm truly not being over dramatic about this. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna use these shades, I'm gonna create this look, and this palette is going in my palettes that I want to declutter. Then I filmed a couple videos, and while I was editing the videos, I was like, dang, like I really like the way that my eyeshadow turned out. So this palette is the most frustrating palette in my entire makeup collection to use because has so much fallout and it's so chunky. But when I tell you, I always love the final result. Like I literally always love the final result. So I don't know what to do. But because this is such a frustrating palette to use, I'm still ranking it at number 13, even though I love the looks that I created. Coming in at number 12, I have a Pat McGrath palette, and this one's ranking a little bit lower because I really only reached into this palette one time this month, and I only reached in for one shade, and it was this shade right here, this beautiful, like special, very glittery, blue, pink, purpley sort of shade. So I just like didn't use the palette that much. That's why I'm ranking this one lower. I do actually really enjoy this palette. I think it's really fun, but I just had more fun playing with some of the other palettes in my collection this month. By the way, I truly just am ranking every single palette that I use each month, and there could be repeats and will be repeats throughout each month. And just because I'm ranking a palette low doesn't mean like it's a bad palette. It's just in terms of the palettes that I used and the looks that I created in that given month, that's where I'm ranking each palette, because it's this, you know, this is so serious, this palette ranking. I need you to know. Okay, next up, this is number 11, I believe. It is my Huda Beauty Neon Obsessions palette, and I use this to create my very vibrant pink look. And I actually have so much fun every single time I reach into this palette. I'm already very excited to create some looks this summer with this palette. I want to use this yellow shade as an inner corner highlight. I love a sparkly yellow inner corner. I have one today. I love me a good yellow inner corner highlight. So maybe I can perhaps hit pan on this shade. That could be a goal for this summer. But this is a neon palette, so I'm just not reaching for this all that often, and that's why I'm ranking that one at number 11. And then coming in at number 10, I have the Natasha Denona Love palette. This is the midi size. I just was never as in love with this palette as so many other people were with the Natasha Denona Love palette, and it just like doesn't compare, in my opinion, to my other Natasha Denona midis. And it's not the quality, because the quality in this palette is actually really good. It more so has to do with the color story is just not one that inspires me in the least. Like in the least. I don't really know what else I can say about this. I did reach into this a couple of times. I tried to create some pink looks since it was February, the month of love, but I have a feeling this palette just probably won't get a ton of use out of me the rest of the year because it's just not a favorite of mine. And then coming in at number 9 is the palette that is all over my eyes today. It is the Sugarpill Fun Size palette, and I truly do love this palette. It is an all matte, colorful, pastel, yet like bright pastels, little mini palette, and I think it's so fun and so cute. I love playing around with this palette. This palette is truly the palette that made me start to experiment or just feel a little bit more comfortable with playing around with color. But it's just not something I'm reaching for on an everyday basis. So I have fun when I use it, but it's not something I'm going to be reaching for every day. Coming in at number 8, similar story. I had trouble deciding where I wanted to rank each of these. Like, they could honestly be interchangeable, but I have the Kaleidos Escape Pod next. I use this palette. I use this very bright pink shade when I was creating my vibrant Valentine's Day look. The reason I ranked this palette above the Sugarpill Bite Size is honestly, there are a couple of very similar shades between the Bite Size palette and the Escape Pod, but I love that the Escape Pod has 5 shimmers in it because I love me a shimmer all over the lid, although I do have an all matte look with the exception of my inner corner today. But I love the option of the shimmers, and these shimmers are, I like them because they are shimmers that I feel like I can pop into a neutral look to still keep it like appropriate for like work, but add like a pop of fun. I'm happy that I pulled this out for the look that I created because it kind of motivated me to want to reach for this more frequently. This is something that got neglected for sure last year, and I definitely want to pull that one out again. And then coming in at number 7, I have this one from LH Cosmetics. So this is my first time trying Linda Hallberg's brand, and this is the Daybreak palette. This is what this looks like. It is a really beautiful, cool toned blue palette, blue and purple, and I really enjoyed my time with this palette. I love all of the looks that I created. I had a lot of fun creating some looks with this, and while I felt stuck when I first looked into this palette, I actually felt pretty creatively inspired when I started to actually use the palette to create looks. Like, it just all came to me at once. This is just not a palette that I'm going to be reaching for on an everyday basis. Quality is really good, and again, I've loved all the looks that I've created with this palette. It's just not an everyday palette for me. Coming in at number 7, I have the What's Up Beauty palette. This citrine shade. This shade in citrine, this beautiful yellow shimmer, is what I have on my inner corner today. I absolutely love this palette for its shimmers, and I am bound and determined to hit pan on the shade citrine this year. So that is gonna happen, and I had to rank this one kind of in the middle just because this is always like, I love reaching into that shade citrine. So that is my number 7. Coming in at number 6, I have my packaging is broke, but I have the Cliodah Cosmetics Dragonfruit palette, and this is another just really fun palette. This is an all shimmer palette, so also not a palette that's going to be an everyday sort of palette for me. Not a palette I personally feel like I can create. I don't love an all shimmer look, so I'm not going to be reaching into this palette and just this palette alone to create a look. So that knocked it down in the ranking a little bit, but this has some really fun shades. I used this for one of the Valentine's looks that I created. I also reached into this for some inner corner highlighting, and honestly, I'm so excited to reach into this again in March and use these pops of green to create some fun green looks. I have been obsessed with the shade green lately. I have a pop of green on right now. It's a green sports bra. In fact, I was going to film this video in the sports bra, but I feel like I've done nothing but wear this sports bra and another green shirt lately, so I was like, ugh, I feel like I should switch it up. So I put on another favorite of mine, my tequila crew neck. Coming in at number 5, 4? Was I off? I think I was misgiving numbers, but whatever. Next up is my ABh Sultry. This is coming in at number 4. This is my current Pan That palette, and I really enjoy this palette. I wouldn't say I'm starting to get burnt out, but I feel like I'm not bored of this palette, but like I'm bored of the palette, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, I'm enjoying trying and having some fun with this journey of Pan That palette, which I've never done before, but also like I want some variety in my life. This is just a solid palette if I'm looking for something cool tone, but it has pops of warm tones as well. And this has been a day-to-day like go-to for me. I did not bring this traveling with me though, because I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit, but this is a staple in my collection. I do love this palette. This has been a most used palette throughout my makeup collection throughout the years. So obviously I do love it. I need some variety. Coming in at number 3 is my other Linda Hallberg Cosmetics palette, LH Cosmetics. This is the Shimmer Saga palette, and this is just a quad of vibrant shimmers. This is so fun for just like either like a one shadow on your lid, like a pop of shimmer on your lid, or if you want to add shimmer to a look you've already created, it's also really fun for that. I just love that it's like a cute little pocket palette as well, like a little quad that I can just easily transport with me if I'm needing a little like extra va-va-voom or a little extra oomph to a look. I've really been enjoying this, so very happy to have that in my collection. Coming in at number 2, the top 2 palettes actually are the palettes that I took traveling with me for work. So coming in at number 2, I have my Tartlett in Bloom. I repurchased this palette at the end of 2022 because I was missing this in my collection so much. This was one of the first eyeshadow palettes I ever purchased, especially in terms of like when I was starting to get into makeup and YouTube. This is one of the first palettes. that I purchased, and it is so near and dear to my heart. I reached for this all but one day that I was traveling. I love this palette so much. I love that it is just, like, if you are not good at creating looks in your mind, it just so easily lays out the eyeshadows and how you could create looks. It also is more cool leaning, and I have just been into cool tones lately. I feel like cool toned eyeshadow just looks better against my complexion and skin tone, so it just works so well for me. I love this palette so much, and I'm excited to continue to get use out of this palette this year. And then coming in at number 1, this is a palette that typically always comes traveling with me, and I am reminded as to how much I love this palette. This is the Colourpop Lemoncellio palette. So this isn't necessarily a cool toned palette. This is more warm leaning, obviously, but you have some pops of like cooler tones in here. And I love this palette because it's neutral with fun pops of color. So you have this pop of blue. I love the matte yellow. I also love the yellow shimmer. I love the green shimmer you have here, and like truly all of the shimmers in this palette just perform so well. It's such a beautiful palette. It's such a good one to take traveling because, again, you can go neutral, but then you have these fun pops if you want to, you know, add a little pop or a little zest to whatever you're doing. I love this palette so much, and this is my top used palette for the month of February. So that wraps it up for today's video. Those are the 14 palettes that I used throughout the month of February and how I would rank them from least favorite used all the way to my most favorite used. I would love to know, what palettes were you using in the month of February? What palettes do you plan to use in March? I am wanting to like at least rotate through 20 palettes in March. Like, I'm hoping I have 20 palettes to rank for you next month. We shall see. But thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.